Hi, I'm Jay Oliver Glasgow, and you are? No, I really want to hear you. So I'm Jay, and you are? Ah, there you go. I feel more connected already. We live in a connected world, you and I. We have automated homes and automated cars, and even our bathrooms are automated. And I'm kind of okay with that. Except I'm a creature of habit, and I get used to a certain device being automated. And invariably, I end up in a different bathroom somewhere, standing in front of the same device, waiting awkwardly for something to happen. I don't know, maybe we can get our friends at W3C or Oasis to create a global standard for rolling out bathroom automation. I don't know. What do I know? You know, 30 years ago when I started out in this industry, I could fit everything that I knew about computer science on one of these and have room enough left over for a copy of Zork. And if you laughed at that, I just got some data on you, right? But through an incredible career where, I've just been blessed enough to be in the room when some amazing innovation took place. We're talking cross-platform stuff, and 15 patents later, I can now fit everything that I know about computer science on one of these and have room enough left over for a copy of Fortnite. And if you laughed at that, well, I just got some more data on you, right? But what would be on this flash drive? Would it be everything that I know or a digital representation of everything that I know? And would it be the only copy? You know, part of the way the internet works is by the transmission of light. And if we need to change some things around, reroute some stuff, cache some stuff, we just run that light past mirrors and create as many copies as we need. Now, there's probably an untold number of copies of everything that I know just whizzing around the planet. And if I made it my purpose in life to go out and try to collect it all back up and put it in one place, it'd be impossible. But beyond what we know, we also create data. You know, just now inside your body, within the last second, a cell split. Well, 700,000 cell split. But inside just one of them, you created 1.5 gigabytes of data. You know, you multiply that out across the entire day, and by the time you go to bed tonight, you're going to have created 150 billion gigabytes of data. That's 150 zettabytes. But you layer on top of that all the rest of our vital signs, our respiratory, our brainwave patterns. You're talking about enough data to choke a supercomputer in less than 5 minutes. Beyond biologic, we are also connected creatures, you and I, and we now create about a half a gig of data a day on the internet each. So just in your phone calls, in your tweets, in your photographs, and all that location data that's just spamming off of your devices. And you know what? You don't even, beyond just what we're doing connected, we create other kinds of data as well. You know, as I'm speaking to you right now, I'm creating data. And as you're hearing me, you are creating data. And as you're hearing me through a different filter of your own life experiences than the person next to you, the data you are creating is different than the data that your neighbor is creating. And I don't even have to speak to create data. I can create data when I'm completely silent. That's actually my wife's favorite kind of data. But we increase the amount of data that's being created when we increase the number of receivers in a room. You know, when I was young, I guess the biggest problem we might have faced was a nosy neighbor overhearing a conversation we were having. But today we have Alexa and Bixby and Cortana and Siri and Google, and they're all listening in, all creating data while we're creating data. You know, in 1947, Claude Shannon wrote a book called A Mathematical Theory of Communication, and in it he described actors engaging systems creating data. And although the word data was nothing new at the time, it had been around a while, he did coin the word bit to describe the smallest distillation of data. And when he backed away from his thesis, he said, not all data is information. In fact, most of it is quite meaningless to both humans and machines. So he postulated that it takes an observer finding value or meaning in the data in order for it to become information. Whoa, what happened there? For you see, my friends, you can't create information without concomitantly, now that's a really fancy word that means at the same time, creating information rights. And if I were to overlay on top of Claude Shannon's diagram information rights, you might start to observe that it takes on properties of a product. Oh, I know, there's economists in the audience that will go, well, Jay, in order for it to be a real product, it must enjoy all three phases of the product life cycle: resource, commodity, and goods. Well, let's see if it does. When you engage a system and you create information rights just for a moment in time, they exist as a resource, like wheat in the field ready to be harvested. But when that business applies an agreement to the use of your information, now that's like if you don't opt out, we're going to use your information for this, or if you do opt in, we're going to use your information for that. It has a tendency to tamp down the noise in the system and turn up the signal, kind of like attenuation. And it harvests the resource of your information rights into a commodity that can be bought and sold. And what do they do with that? Well, they bake your information into goods, like GPS information for a traffic jam down the road, or health studies. Or how about this one? Political, aggregate, and anonymous reports. We've heard that one recently, haven't we? And when businesses start to misuse your information, when they exploit it, now governments are getting into the business of giving them fines, sometimes billions of dollars worth. My only question about that is, if you're the actor who's creating the commodity in the first place, how is that not a tax indirectly levied on you? And how is that not a taking? And how are they not turning businesses into unwitting tax collection agencies? Well, I don't know about any of that, but I do know this. We have established that information rights are real and that they can be bought, sold, and even taxed. But the one question we haven't really answered is, who owns them? Well, it's really difficult to prove that you own something that you can't hold. What's the old adage? Possession is 9/10 of the law. Well, if you go into the court and try to prove you own something that you're not holding, if you flip that around on the inverse, you only have 1/10 of the law at your back and an uphill climb in front of you. Just ask our old pal Tyrion Lannister in the Game of Thrones. When he was being roughed up by a jailer, he said, "I have gold." And the jailer scoffs, "You have no gold." And he says, "Listen to me. Sometimes possession is an abstract concept. When they captured me, they took my purse, but I still own the gold." Well, while he's trying to figure that one out, you and I have a better illustration, don't we? Pretend for a moment that you're a singer-songwriter and you've written a song. You go into a studio to record it. You're certainly an actor engaging a system, creating information and information rights. Who owns the rights to it? Well, you do. Unless an agreement is in place between you and the studio beforehand, that's settled law. But we do start to see how important agreements play a role in rights equivalent to ownership. It's like a handle into the intangible. In this way, data is a lot like antimatter from Star Trek. They couldn't touch it because it would blow up the universe, right? So what did they do? They wrapped it in an anti-grav field and attached a handle to it. Information rights is kind of like that. It's the handle into the intangible of the data that you produce every single day. And companies, tech companies, back in the late 80s and early 90s, totally got this. They had attorneys who would, almost famously bang the table and yell at everybody every single day and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are not selling software. We are not selling applications. We are selling licenses, information rights. And upon this legal theory, mighty empires were built. Just go back in time with me to 1996 and stand in line at Circuit City. And as we're about to buy Tomb Raider, you and I might be tempted to buy a box of blank CDs. Oh, not because we're going to make a copy of Tomb Raider and give it to our best friend Paul next door. No, we would never do that, right? But when we get to the register, something very interesting happened. They charged us taxes for the box of blank CDs, but they didn't charge us taxes on the box of Tomb Raider. The same thing. Why not? Well, because until the government closed that loophole, they totally saw it for what it was. You were buying a work for hire. You were buying the rights to use Tomb Raider. You weren't buying the media in the box. Oh, this is very important. You know, it's a little like this glass of water. If I were to try to make a legal claim that I owned a water molecule, how would that sound in court? Your Honor, I own a water molecule. And to prove it, if the court will just turn its attention to this glass, just there on the surface, 3 molecules over from the edge of the glass, that's the, oh crud, it just evaporated. You can't own water, but you can own the rights to it. Sure, ever since the Treaty of Westphalia established nation-states over 400 years ago, sovereign countries have fought over and procured competing rights to common resources such as water. But how in the world would individuals like you and I approach something like that? Well, one age-old way of doing it is to form co-ops. And in the area of water rights, we have fish hatcheries that are doing some really great things with common resources such as water. But you know what? In the retail space, they got it too. REI, Recreational Equipment Incorporated, that's a co-op, right? And in agriculture, they have farmers co-ops, where they not only share resources, but they build a common legal entity that protects them from risk and liability. And guess what? Here we are in the information age, and they already have one. privacycoop.com that's helping us get a handle on our own information rights. But why am I telling you all of this? Well, remember all of that data that you're creating all day long? I want you to picture it for a moment as a sea of green zeros and ones in a data center. And next to it, there's a wall with a robot up on top. You know, some artificial intelligence or machine learning. And it's looking out at all of that data that you've created, and it's completely informed by your personal information. And we're going to assume for the moment that it has the legal rights to do so. And it has an idea, aha, an epiphany, what we in the business call an insight. And it turns to a totally different section of that data center, a blue section, if you will, and it writes that insight down. Now that's an actor engaging a totally different system, creating information rights. Who owns those? Not you. Businesses call this a 360 profile, and they've been doing it for years. And they've gotten so good that sometimes before your data even hits a hard drive, it's already informed your 360 profile. Why do you think businesses are so cavalier about it when privacy regulations say you must allow consumers the ability to delete all their personal information? And they kind of go, okay, sure. Here's a button. You want to delete all your personal information? Go ahead. It's because they have already got a 360 profile on you, and they own the rights to it. It's okay if you feel a little overwhelmed. You're not the first person to feel this way. I promise. So what can you do about it? Well, to begin with, we should all probably start reading the terms and conditions for what we put on our devices. It's where our information rights gets commoditized. But we do face a challenge. You're looking at about 250 hours per year just to read the terms and conditions for the apps that you put on your phone. No, I don't know. Maybe it makes sense for us to join a co-op, because what would we gain if we did? Well, the very first thing is shared licensing pools, which would bring us group power for group action. And it would help us de-risk our lives. What in the world do I mean by that? Well, if you've been hanging your hat on the idea that you can own your own data, and you can't, and somebody steals it or breaches it or outright sells it to somebody else, we might become crestfallen and go, woe is me, my data's gone, I can never get it back. But if you hang your hat on the nail of information rights and that you do own them, and somebody absconds with a copy of your data, then just like the singer-songwriter who gets plagiarized and they start bootlegging the song out the back door, you can pursue them with existing legal tools and rules, like cease and desist orders and class action lawsuits. We don't need any more regulations or law. We already have what we need. This would pave the way to shared dividends, which is a totally new wealth. This is not redistribution of wealth. This is not Robin Hood robbing from the rich to give to the poor until the rich are poor. This is a renewable wealth because you're an actor engaging with systems every single day, creating new commodities and new data. That's money in your pocket, like over and over and over again. And while that gets us very excited in our first world lives, could you imagine what this would mean to somebody in the third world, where vast amounts of data are being created every single day? With an interface and an agreement in place that would help businesses freely license the use of that information, we're talking about an infusion of capital into the very poorest corners of the world, the likes of which we have never seen before. Now that is an idea we're spreading, growing, and using. #information rights. I'm J. Oliver Glasgow. Thank you very much.